Hey guys, what is up? My name is PandaMaster, and welcome to my spoiler-free review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's right, boys and girls, we're talking about this. We're talking about the big kahuna, the movie that everybody's been waiting for. Not really. It was really interesting to hear the discourse around this movie. I was sort of in the middle. Either people were super excited for it, like literally worshiping Zack Snyder at his feet, or like they were like, "This thing's gonna bomb. This thing's gonna be terrible." I was sort of in the middle. Like I was very curious about it, and I figured it would probably be better, though. I thought it was a little overhyped, but yeah, I just had very interesting, this I was just kind of observing everything, and so yeah, let's talk about this. So first off, I want to say overall, I think this is a high 7. I think it is a good movie. I think it is better than the original Justice League. I thought so for just throwing it out there. I thought that the original Justice League was okay. It was a 6 out of 10. I didn't think it was bad, but I also didn't think it was all that great either, especially compared to the Avengers, right? But I didn't think it was bad. I thought the new characters were really well done. I thought Cyborg was the best part of the film in terms of just character. I was really interested in his character, and I really liked what they did with it. Pretty much all of the things I liked about Justice League are present in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which, leads me to believe that the things I like were Zack Snyder's doing. So, congrats to him. Especially because, like I said, I really liked Cyborg in the original Justice League, what they had from him, and it got miles better in Zack Snyder's Justice League. I think Cyborg is the best part of this, although honorable mention to Steppenwolf. And again, I'm going to keep things spoiler-free with the changes here, but essentially I think the most worthwhile changes in this film were, I thought tonally this fit much better. It was much more cohesive, but just in terms of character development and what we have going on here, I think is the best part. And so before I get too much into it, I want to say this is not worth 4 hours of your time. And I say that meaning not that you shouldn't, not that nobody should watch it or anything like that. I don't mean it that way. I just mean 4 hours is way too long. I think a lot of critics have agreed. People are obsessed with this movie. People literally are worshiping it. People seem to be really happy with it and really enjoy it a lot, which is cool. That's awesome. Good for you. I just think it goes on way too long. I think fluff is the biggest. I think it's the biggest problem with this movie. I think it could easily be a 3.5-hour movie, and I say that there aren't too many 3.5-hour movies out there, right? So that's still high praise, because I think a lot of this film deserves to be there. That being said, that's an entire half hour of footage that could have been cut here, and I think that's the biggest issue I have with Zack Snyder's Justice League, is that while this is a director's cut, that's what it is, it's an extended edition, all that, it literally feels like nothing has been cut here whatsoever, to the point where it's like the pacing can really slog sometimes because of it. And so there were just some scenes that just felt like they didn't really need to be there, and I can understand why they're there, because I think that's kind of the whole point, is to really give this is the complete Justice League, right? I don't think there's anything necessarily missing from this film, right? But that's not to say that there isn't anything that shouldn't be there. So that would honestly be my biggest complaint. I think Zack Snyder just kind of takes himself a little too seriously here, and not to say that it could use more jokes. I think in terms of the mix between dark, serious tone and then some lighthearted stuff to kind of lighten the mood a little bit, I think is really well done here. I think that was one of the things that people criticized the most with Justice League, as people are calling it. And yeah, I think this movie is definitely better, right? This feels like a cohesive film. It just goes on way too long. I think a lot of the stuff added in the first part. So another thing is that this is split into narrative acts, right? He first said, I think he said originally it was going to come out in 4 episodes, but then he's like, nah, it's a full movie. And there's 6 parts in an epilogue. So the first part, which is called Don't Count on It, Batman, which, again, I'm going to stay away from spoilers, but the first part, there's just a lot of stuff that is just kind of added there. And then the second part, it's, it's good, but kind of the same thing in terms of, like, just, like, some things that are added. Like, there are some things that are nice, and I think overall it is good. Really, part 3 is, I think, the part that a lot of people are focusing on. I think it is probably the part with the most new thing. I mean, the epilogue is almost entirely new, but part 3 is where you see the major differences between film versions. Aside from the very end, you have a it's the I would say the blueprint is the same, but they go about it in different ways. But part 3 is really where you see so much of what was cut out of the original, and it is what makes this the definitive Justice League, in my opinion, because you essentially have a whole lot of character depth added to it, specifically with Cyborg. And you see much more of his backstory, you see more of Flash's backstory, and it just makes a lot of sense, because one of my biggest criticisms of Justice League, I should say, was that these characters were just thrown in. At the time, I was like, I understand there's only so much you can do. Like, it's one of those things where it's like they are trying to rush this, and I feel like it would have been better if it wasn't rushed. But given that this is their first film, I can understand the amount of runtime they were given, and I think they did the best they could. But this is even better. I mean, this is a 4-hour movie, so you can make things about, like, obviously Joss Whedon was not trying to create a 4-hour film. So I think I think it can be taken with a grain of salt about, like, I think the things added in here in terms of that are very good and should be here. But again, a 4-hour movie is not something I would want to sit through in a movie theater, right? And so it's interesting. I think HBO Max is the best place for it, and personally, I would love to see, Snyder cut, like Zack Snyder's Justice League 2, right? It's interesting that he did release the storyboards for essentially everything. He kind of just laid everything out on the table. At this point, I kind of wish he didn't do that, like, he could just give away hints and different things like that. We kind of saw that with this. Like, we knew a lot of the new stuff coming beforehand that he kind of teased and everything. Like, we knew, and for people who just have not been paying attention, I won't say, but there's plenty of stuff that's new here that we already knew about that he said was going to be here. But, like, I will say, the inclusion of Darkseid, I say that because it's in the trailers, which, again, maybe you just haven't seen any trailers, but yeah, the inclusion of Darkseid, I think they made some really good stuff, because one thing I was worried here is that this was just going to be a Darkseid movie now, which it's not that. And like I said, Steppenwolf is given a much, much better character dynamic, right? And without going into spoiler territory, I think his character is handled so much better. His CGI is completely changed, which is really, really good. I think that's what most of their money went to in terms of visual effects, because there are other things added that are clearly not finished. Like, you can, like, clear as day tell, like, new film sometimes, just because the CGI is almost terrible. That's how bad it is. Like, it's just really, really, like, low budget. So you could tell they were definitely strapped. Like, his vision, I mean, they spent an extra $70 million on, on top of the $300 million that it cost to produce the original Justice League. They spent an extra $70 million on, like, reshoots and retouching and all of this and that. And so, but, compared to the original 300, because this is essentially twice as much. So they basically had half the budget of the original, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? Like, they doubled the time. I mean, technically, in and of itself, if they double the time, it should cost another $300 million. But I'm gonna say, realistically, he should have gotten $150 million. And so you're working with half the budget of what his vision required, I guess. So I think he was under some constraints here, even when, you know, the fans were like, "Oh, this is his true vision." I would even go so far as to say this still isn't necessarily. I think if he was given an unlimited budget, I think the CGI would have been much better. So I don't necessarily fault the film for that, but it is certainly not complete in that regard. But yeah, I realize it's already been 10 minutes, my God, and I don't want to, you know, repeat myself too much, so I don't think there's a ton more I can say without going into spoilers, but I think this is definitely the definitive Justice League. I don't think it needed this 4 hours. Like I said, I think 3.5, which is high praise, because, you know, it takes a lot to get you to sit through a 3.5-hour movie. So it is high praise for me to say that. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of fluff that makes it more difficult to watch for me. Like, I was not glued to my seat the entirety of the 4 hours. And I think that's, like I said, the biggest problem with Zack Snyder's Justice League. Like I said, I really want to see what he does next. And I hope that just the huge reaction that the internet's having over it right now will inspire WB to let him keep going. Because, yeah, I would love to see a sequel that is, again, I think just because Zack Snyder, his ideas are to the moon. Like, he has big ideas, big plans. I think if he were to do another one, it wouldn't be a 2-hour film. It would be another 3.5, 4-hour film. But yeah, just work on his pacing a little bit. I think that's the biggest thing. I think, and this is where I come back to him taking himself a little too seriously. It's not in the tone. It's in the point where there are so many things, like, there's very melodramatic moments sometimes that are really, really drawn out, because I think he's trying to incorporate, like, symbolism and depth and things like that to really create a lot of atmosphere, right, in the film, that sometimes work really, really well, especially the scene in the epilogue that a lot of people are talking about on Twitter right now, where we have the Joker featured. I say that because it was in a trailer. You know, I think there's a lot of atmosphere there, and I think that was a really, really good scene. But sometimes it's just not pulled off well, and it just comes off as a drag, and it's like, okay, can we move on, please? Like, and I think that's, like I said, my biggest issue with this. I don't think it needed to be 4 hours, but I could still easily see it being 3.5. Like, you could cut out a half an hour of footage, which is a lot of footage. But just because there's so many little areas that you could just shave down a little bit, and it would feel much more compact versus this essentially just being, like, I don't want to say it feels unedited. It just, yeah, I don't know. It can get to the point where that's not necessarily something I want to see, but I think big superhero fans are going to be really satisfied with this. Like I said, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was necessarily, like, great or anything. I think if it was cut down, it would be great. But now I think this is a major improvement over the original. And like I said, I would love to see where he goes next. And even if he doesn't do, just like what is next on his docket? Because last I heard, he said he didn't have anything going right now in terms of DC, big stuff, right? His biggest thing, that's what it is. He's working on Army of the Dead, which is coming out on Netflix in May, I believe. Yeah, May 21st. That's his next big project. And he's also involved in Suicide Squad and the Flash movie. So he's just an executive producer there. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that his relationship, this whole experience has been wacky because a lot of the cast of Justice League basically shat on WB and said they're terrible. And so it's difficult to work with them. And I think it's the background that is going to make this so difficult to continue. Because, like, Ray Fisher and Zack Snyder have pushed back a lot against WB, to the point where it seems Ray Fisher is not going to be involved in any way, shape, or form going forward, which is nuts because he does really, really well here. And so I'm curious about how things are going to move forward from here. But yeah, anyway, this is a little longer than my usual videos, but also it's a long movie. There's a lot to say about it, and I think there's a lot of discussion to be had, and I'd love to have that with you guys. So let me know you guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Let's have a discussion about it. There's plenty more I could say, but again, a lot of it has to deal with spoilers, but I think this is worth your time to at least start and check out and see how you feel. Make your own decisions, that sort of thing. But since it's on HBO Max, it makes it a lot easier to recommend. And so, yeah, like this video, subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys next time for whatever it is I'm doing. All right, see ya.